Captain Teo stood at the viewing window of the human ship, looking out at the massive space station called Harmony Point. It was huge, with lights spreading across its surface like stars. The ship had traveled for 3 years to reach this place, and now they were finally here. Behind him, Dr. Haywan walked across the bridge, checking information on her tablet. She was nervous, but she did not show it. This was the most important meeting humanity had ever had with alien life. "How are you feeling?" Haywan asked Teo. Her voice was calm and steady, though her hands were shaking a little. Teo turned from the window. His face was hard and weathered from years of military service. "We came here to show them we are equals," he said simply. "We will show them respect, and we will ask for respect in return. That is our mission." Haywan nodded. She had studied alien languages and cultures for her entire life. She knew more about the Coalition than any other human. The Coalition was a group of alien species that had controlled trade and peace across the galaxy for hundreds of years. They had technology that humans could barely understand. They had lived in cities on worlds that orbited distant stars. And now, humanity was joining them, asking for a place at their table. The human ship moved slowly toward Harmony Point. Workers inside the station began moving around, preparing for the arrival. Captain Teo could see them on the screens, tall beings with strange shapes, moving with grace and precision. Some had extra arms, some had skin that seemed to glow. All of them looked powerful and dangerous in their own way. When the ship finally stopped at the docking bay, Teo and Haywan prepared to meet the Coalition's leaders. Teo wore his formal military uniform, dark blue with gold patterns that showed his rank. Haywan wore simple clothes that showed respect for their alien hosts. 20 soldiers stood behind them, all trained and ready for anything, but they carried no weapons. Captain Teo had decided that weapons would send the wrong message. The door opened, and they walked into the station. What they saw took their breath away. The inside of Harmony Point was beautiful and strange. The building seemed to grow from the metal walls like plants. Lights of different colors filled the air. Thousands of alien beings moved around them, conducting business, trading goods, and speaking in languages that humans could not understand. A tall creature with blue skin and 3 eyes approached them. This was Counselor Vexthor, the leader of the Coalition's council. He had ruled the galactic trade for 50 years. His face showed no welcome, no kindness, just cold observation. "Humans," Vexthor said, his voice deep and cold. "Welcome to Harmony Point. We have been waiting to see what these young species look like in person. You are smaller than we expected, much smaller." Haywan stepped forward and bowed, showing respect. "Counselor Vexthor, we honor you and the Coalition. We have come far to meet with you and to ask for friendship among our peoples." Vexthor did not bow back. He did not even nod. "Friendship," he repeated the word as if it tasted bad. "Tell me, humans, what do you have to offer the Coalition? What technology? What resources? What power do you bring to our table?" Captain Teo answered calmly. "We bring ourselves. We bring a new perspective and new ideas. We bring the willingness to work and build and learn. We come in peace, asking only for equal treatment and fair trade." The counselor's other eyes moved left and right, looking Teo up and down. "Equal treatment?" he said, and then he laughed. It was not a kind laugh. Other aliens around them began to laugh too. "You are primitives. Your ships are outdated. Your weapons are weak. Your culture is only thousands of years old. The Zesh have been building civilizations for 1,000,000 years. The Krell have technology you cannot even imagine. And you speak of equality?" Haywan felt her heart drop. This was not going well. But she kept her voice steady. "We may be young as a species, but we are strong and determined. We believe that everyone deserves respect, no matter their age or technology." Vexthor's face changed. His expression became harder, colder. "You believe wrong," he said. "The coalition has rules. Humans will follow these rules if you wish to trade with us. First, you will pay taxes to the coalition treasury. These taxes will be very high because you are new and you have much to learn. Second, you will not make weapons without approval from the council. We cannot allow primitives to create weapons that might hurt others. Third, you will acknowledge that the coalition is superior to your people, and you will treat all coalition members with the respect of a lower species to a higher species." Captain Teo felt anger rising in his chest, but he controlled it. "These terms are not fair. We are not a lower species. We are different, but we are not lower. We cannot agree to these terms." Vexthor stood up from his seat. He was very tall, and he used his size to seem powerful. "Then you cannot trade with the coalition. In fact, you are wasting our time. Guards!" he called out, and several large alien soldiers appeared. "Remove these primitives from Harmony Point. They are no longer welcome here." The soldiers moved toward the humans. Teo raised his hand to signal his people not to fight. It would not help them now. But as they walked toward the ship, Teo stopped and turned back to look at Vexthor one more time. "You have made a mistake today," Teo said quietly. "We came here asking for peace. We came here showing respect. But you treated us like we were nothing. You treated us like dirt." "You laughed at us in front of your people. Remember this moment, counselor. Because one day you will understand what you have done, and you will be sorry." Vexthor laughed again, but this time it sounded less confident. "Your words mean nothing, human. Go back to your small planet. Stay there where you belong. The galaxy does not need you." Teo said nothing more. He turned and walked back to his ship with Haywan and his soldiers. As the ship began to move away from Harmony Point, Haywan stood beside him at the window again. "What do we do now?" she asked. She felt like the mission had failed completely. They had traveled so far for nothing. Captain Teo watched the station grow smaller as they moved away. His jaw was tight, his hands were closed into fists, but when he spoke, his voice was calm and steady. "Now," he said, "we go home, and now we prepare. We prepare in ways they cannot imagine. We work harder, think faster, and fight harder than any species they have ever seen. We show them that you cannot insult humanity and escape without consequence." Haywan looked at him with surprise. This was not the peaceful diplomat she had known. This was a warrior, and in that moment, she understood. The humiliation of today would not destroy humanity. It would fuel them. It would make them stronger. As the human ship jumped into faster-than-light travel, heading back toward Earth, Vexthor stood on Harmony Point, watching them leave. He felt confident that he had made the right decision. The humans were weak. They were nothing. They would never be a threat to the coalition. He was very wrong about this. The galaxy did not know it yet. But something important had just changed. Humanity had come seeking friendship and been rejected. Humanity had been insulted and humiliated in front of the whole galaxy. And now, humanity would respond in the only way a desperate species knows how. With fire, with determination, and with a hunger to prove that they belonged among the stars. The first encounter had ended, but it was really the beginning of something much larger, something that would change the entire galaxy forever. 1 year had passed since the human delegation returned from Harmony Point. Earth had changed. Captain Teo's report about the coalition's rejection had spread across the planet like fire. Every nation, every government, and every military leader had read his words about the insults and the humiliation. And every single human had understood the same thing. The galaxy would not accept them easily. They would have to take their place by force. General Hyun-soo sat in the command center of Earth's newest military base. The walls around him were covered with screens showing data, plans, and information. He was a tall man with gray hair and eyes that always looked like they were thinking 10 steps ahead. Hyun-soo had studied military strategy his entire life. He had read about wars on Earth. He had learned from human history. And now he had a new enemy to understand. The Coalition. "Show me everything we know about their weapons," Hyun-soo said to the officer standing next to him. The officer moved to a screen and brought up information. "Their ships are faster than ours. Their weapons are more powerful. Their shields are better. By every measurement, they are superior to us." Hyun-soo nodded slowly. "That is what they believe," he said. "That is what they expect us to think, but they are wrong. Show me their strategy. Show me how they fight." The officer changed the screens. Information about coalition military tactics appeared. Hyun-soo studied it carefully. He looked at how their ships moved in battles. He examined their defense systems. He watched recorded images of coalition forces protecting their territories, and slowly a smile appeared on his face. "They are weak," he said finally. The officer looked shocked. "General, how can you say that? They are clearly superior." "Superior in technology, yes," Hyun-soo interrupted, "but weak in strategy, weak in will, weak in their spirit. Look at these battles. They always follow the same patterns. They use the same tactics repeatedly. They expect their enemies to fight like civilized beings. They do not expect desperation. They do not expect sacrifice. They do not expect someone willing to lose everything to win." In another building on Earth, engineer Ji-woo was working with a team of scientists. They were studying a piece of coalition technology that humans had found years ago. Ji-woo was brilliant and obsessed with understanding how the aliens built their machines. She believed that if she could understand their technology, she could make it better. "We are thinking about this wrong," she told her team. They sat around a large table with screens and models between them. "The coalition designs their weapons to be perfect, to be beautiful, to win with minimum damage. But they design them for species that think like them. They design for creatures that value honor and rules." One of her engineers interrupted. "What are you saying, Engineer Ji-woo?" Ji-woo stood up and started walking back and forth. Her mind was moving quickly now, making connections, seeing possibilities. "We need to build weapons that humans would build, weapons that are not perfect, weapons that are cruel, weapons that break the rules, weapons that use numbers instead of elegance. If they have one perfect ship, we send 10 crude ships. If they expect honor, we attack without warning. If they expect soldiers, we send machines with no fear and no mercy." She looked at the faces around the table. Some seemed shocked. Some seemed excited. All of them understood that this was not how the coalition thought. This was something different. This was human. "Build me a ship that can be piloted by artificial intelligence," Ji-woo commanded. "Build me weapons that cost 1/10 what their weapons cost. Build me tools of war that they will not understand. Build me the future of human military power." In government buildings and military centers across Earth, the same conversation was happening in 1,000 different forms. Humans were mobilizing. Factories that had built consumer goods were now building military equipment. Scientists were working 20-hour days trying to improve every aspect of human technology. Soldiers were training with new tactics and new weapons. But most importantly, something was changing in the human spirit. For the first time, humanity had a single goal. For the first time, they were unified. They had been rejected. They had been insulted. They had been treated like children. And now, they would prove that they were stronger than anyone imagined. Captain Teo visited the shipyards where new military vessels were being built. He walked through massive structures where hundreds of workers moved around like ants in a colony, each one doing their job with perfect focus. The ships were growing larger every day. The weapons were becoming more powerful. The fleet was becoming stronger. Dr. Haywan worked with military intelligence teams. She provided information about the coalition that she had learned from her studies. She told them about the weaknesses she had observed. She explained that the coalition had not fought a real war in 300 years. They had expanded slowly, and most of their enemies had surrendered without fighting. The coalition had never faced an enemy that was willing to fight to the death. "That is our advantage," Haywan explained to the military leaders. "They do not understand desperation. They do not understand what it means to fight when you have nothing left to lose. Humans understand this. Humans have always understood this." 3 years passed. The human military grew from a small force to something massive. Ships were launched, weapons were tested, soldiers were trained, and something remarkable happened. Humans did not get tired. They did not stop working. They did not lose focus. Every worker, every scientist, every soldier understood that they were building the future of their species. General Han Su created training programs that pushed soldiers beyond normal limits. He designed battle tactics that were strange and difficult to understand. He built strategies that used numbers and surprise and sacrifice. He prepared humanity for a war that would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. When everything was finally ready, the human military was not as advanced as the coalition. Their ships were not as perfect. Their weapons were not as elegant. But their ships were fast enough. Their weapons were strong enough. And their soldiers were willing to do things that no coalition species would ever do. Captain Teo, now promoted to Fleet Admiral, stood before the assembled military leaders of Earth. It was 5 years after his humiliation on Harmony Point. He looked tired and old, but his eyes burned with determination. "The coalition believes we are weak," he said. "They believe we are not worth their attention. They believe we will fade away and disappear. Today, we show them they are wrong. Today, we march to war, not because we want glory or treasure. We march to war because we are human. We march to war because they insulted us. And we will never forget. We march to war because we are hungry, and the galaxy is our food." The soldiers cheered, a sound like thunder that shook the building. Admiral Teo looked up at the sky above Earth, the sky where the coalition ships flew and the galaxies spread out endlessly. He made a promise to himself and to every human who had worked toward this moment. "Counselor Vexthor," he said quietly, speaking to an enemy who was light years away. "You told me to go home and stay there. But humans do not stay. We do not hide. We do not accept defeat. We are coming, and when we arrive, the galaxy will understand why you should have shown us respect when you had the chance." The preparation was complete. Humanity was ready. The war was about to begin. The first human battle fleet jumped into coalition space with weapons ready and determination burning in every crew member. Admiral Teo stood on the bridge of the flagship New Sol, watching as the enemy appeared on their screens. 3 coalition military stations protected the border, controlling trade and defending against any threats. The coalition had built these stations 100 years ago and had never needed to upgrade them. They believed nothing could challenge their power. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "Fire all weapons," Admiral Teo commanded, his voice steady and calm. What happened next shocked the coalition and changed the course of galactic history. Hundreds of human ships opened fire on the 3 stations simultaneously. The coalition soldiers did not expect this violence. They did not expect an attack without warning. They did not expect humans to ignore rules of war that every civilized species followed. The stations exploded within minutes, destroyed by relentless human firepower. Not a single coalition ship escaped. Commodore Jax Kahl, commander of coalition forces in the region, received the news with disbelief. A young species from the edge of the galaxy had destroyed 3 military stations and killed 10,000 coalition soldiers. It was impossible. It was unthinkable. He believed that the humans had gotten lucky, that this was a one-time success. He did not understand that he was witnessing the beginning of humanity's rise to power. "Prepare a response fleet," Jaxacal commanded. "Send a military force 20 times larger than the attacking humans. We will crush them and send a message to every primitive species in the galaxy. Do not fight the coalition." But the human fleet was not sitting still, waiting for a counterattack. Captain Minho piloted his fighter ship through space with incredible skill. He was young, only 28 years old, but he had trained his entire life for this moment. His ship was fast and deadly, armed with weapons that humans had designed and built with their own hands. Beside him flew 200 other human pilots, all racing toward their next target. A coalition supply convoy was moving through space, delivering weapons and food to distant stations. Minho's fleet found them and attacked without mercy. The supply ships had no weapons. They were not designed for battle. The drivers panicked and tried to run. Minho and his pilots destroyed every single ship. The supplies were gone, burned in space. The message was clear. The coalition's supply lines were not safe anymore. Commander Yunji worked in the Tactical Operations Center of the New Seoul. Her job was to coordinate thousands of ships, plan attacks, and organize the flow of human forces across space. She was brilliant at her work, seeing patterns and possibilities that other people missed. When Yunji made a plan, it usually succeeded. She used every advantage that humans had: speed, surprise, and numbers. The coalition tried to defend their territories, but they had built their military for protection, not for fighting a desperate enemy that was willing to sacrifice everything. The coalition commanders expected battles to be graceful and organized. Instead, they faced chaos and fire. The coalition sent expensive, perfect ships to fight. Humans sent many cheaper, crude ships. When coalition ships were destroyed one at a time, humans sent 10 more to replace them. Admiral Teo's strategy was working. He divided the coalition forces by attacking in multiple locations at once. The coalition forces were spread too thin, and humans moved faster than they could respond. A coalition world would call for help, but before help arrived, humans would strike them and disappear. A supply station would be destroyed. A mining facility would be captured. A military outpost would be surrounded and destroyed. The turning point came at the Battle of Krell Station. Admiral Teo had decided that they needed to defeat a major coalition military base to prove that humans could win even against large, organized forces. Krell Station was massive, protected by hundreds of defending ships and thousands of weapons. On paper, the coalition had a huge advantage, but Admiral Teo did not care about what was on paper. He cared about winning. The human fleet attacked with overwhelming numbers. Hundreds of ships moved as one organism, coordinated perfectly by Commander Yunji's tactical orders. The coalition ships fought back, but they were trained to fight in organized patterns. Humans broke those patterns. They attacked from directions the coalition did not expect. They used smaller ships to distract, while larger ships attacked. They suffered massive losses, but they did not stop. Then Admiral Teo made a decision that shocked the entire galaxy. A coalition battleship was blocking the human advance, destroying human ships one by one. Instead of continuing a normal attack, Teo ordered the biggest human ship to accelerate directly at the coalition battleship. The human crew had a few minutes to evacuate. They did, moving to escape pods that shot them away to safety. Then the human ship, a massive structure of metal and weapons, crashed directly into the coalition battleship at full speed. Both ships exploded in a brilliant light that could be seen for hundreds of kilometers. The coalition battleship was destroyed. But more importantly, the message was sent across the galaxy in that moment. Humans were willing to die. Humans were willing to sacrifice entire ships and entire crews if it meant victory. The coalition species had never seen this before. They valued life. They thought carefully before risking soldiers. They could not understand a species that was willing to throw away its own people. Commodore Jaxcale watched the video of the collision while sitting in his command center. For the first time, he felt something he had never felt before: fear. The humans were not fighting like a civilized species. They were fighting like animals. They were fighting like creatures that had nothing left to lose. When Krell Station finally fell to human attack, after weeks of brutal fighting, the message spread across Coalition space like a wave. The humans could not be stopped by normal military tactics. They could not be defeated by superior technology. They could only be stopped by overwhelming force, and the Coalition did not have overwhelming force in every location. Admiral Teo stood in the ruins of Krell Station, looking at the damage and the destruction. 10,000 human soldiers had died to take this place. 50,000 Coalition soldiers had died defending it. Around him, the station was dark and quiet, filled with the ghosts of those who had fallen. But Teo did not feel sadness. He felt determination. He felt the knowledge that they were winning. Dr. Haywan sent intelligence reports back to Earth about Coalition reactions. The Coalition was beginning to panic. They had lost battles before, but never like this. Never with such numbers of ships destroyed. Never with such losses of soldiers and supplies. The Coalition had begun to understand that they were facing something new, something that did not follow the old rules. In 1 year of border wars, humanity had destroyed 300 Coalition ships, killed 250,000 Coalition soldiers, and captured 17 military bases. The human losses were terrible: 50,000 dead, 200 ships destroyed. But humans understood that this was the price of freedom. This was the cost of independence. Vexthor received reports on Harmony Point about the human victories. He sat in his chamber, his 3 eyes closed, thinking about the day he had thrown the humans out of his station. He had made a terrible mistake. He had believed in the superiority of the Coalition. He had believed that technology and tradition and centuries of peace meant that they could never be defeated. He was wrong, but by the time Vexthor understood his mistake, it was too late. The human fleet was already preparing for the great offensive. The border wars had just been the beginning. The real war was about to start, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. General Hyun-Soo stood before a map of the galaxy with every Coalition world marked in red. It was a beautiful map, showing the power of the Coalition spreading across the stars. But Hyun-Soo was not looking at the beauty. He was looking at the weakness. Coalition worlds were spread thin across space, each one connected to others by trade routes and military patrols. Each one was protected by a small military force, enough to handle normal situations, but not enough to withstand a coordinated attack from a desperate enemy. "They are overextended," Hyun-Soo told the assembled military commanders. "They have spread their forces across hundreds of systems. We will attack everywhere at the same time. We will not give them time to gather their forces. We will not give them time to respond. We will attack so fast and so hard that their entire military falls apart." The Great Offensive was the most ambitious military plan humanity had ever created. 15 different human fleets would attack 15 different Coalition worlds simultaneously. Each fleet would have hundreds of ships. Each fleet would carry thousands of soldiers trained for ground combat. Each fleet would attack a different target, forcing the Coalition to choose which worlds to defend, and when the Coalition chose, they would fail because they had spread themselves too thin. Dr. Kyung-ah was a psychologist who had studied how alien species thought. She had spent years reading about Coalition leaders, understanding their beliefs and their fears. Now she used this knowledge to help plan the Great Offensive. "The Coalition leaders are old," she explained to General Hyun-Soo. "They have ruled for centuries. They believe in tradition and order. They do not know how to react to chaos. They do not know how to make quick decisions when everything is falling apart around them. We will attack fast. We will attack everywhere. We will give them no time to think. We will overwhelm them." 3 weeks before the Great Offensive began, Admiral Teo sent a message across the galaxy to Counselor Vexthor. The message was simple and direct. The Coalition has 10 days to grant humanity equal status and fair treatment. If you refuse, we will take what is ours by force. Vexthor's response was exactly what Hyun-Soo had predicted. Vexthor laughed. Vexthor said that humans could not possibly defeat the Coalition. Vexthor ordered all Coalition forces to prepare for defense, but did not truly believe an attack would come. He believed the humans were bluffing. He believed that even a desperate species would eventually understand that fighting the Coalition was hopeless. 10 days passed. The deadline came and went. The Coalition did nothing except strengthen their defenses slightly. They were not scared. They were not prepared for what was about to happen. Then, on a morning that historians would later call the Day of Fire, the Great Offensive began. Across the galaxy, human ships appeared from faster-than-light travel and immediately opened fire on Coalition targets. A Coalition shipyard that could build 15 ships per year exploded in nuclear fire. A Coalition mining world, rich with resources, was surrounded by human forces that landed troops and took control of the planet. A Coalition military base was attacked by human ships from unexpected angles, and the defending force was destroyed in minutes. 15 fleets attacked 15 worlds. The Coalition military tried to respond, but they could not organize fast enough. By the time Coalition forces from one world were ordered to help defend another, the first world had already fallen. Coalition commanders made the wrong choices because they did not understand how fast humans moved or how hard humans fought. Lieutenant Dae-sung led ground forces on Coalition world after Coalition world. He was a soldier who had trained his entire life for this moment. He was fast, smart, and completely without mercy. When his forces landed on a Coalition world, they came with tanks and weapons and soldiers who understood that they were fighting for the survival of their species. Coalition soldiers, trained for peacekeeping and police actions, were no match for human warriors who were willing to die. "Move faster," Dae-sung commanded his troops as they attacked a Coalition city. "Do not wait for them to organize. Do not give them time to surrender. Take everything." Commander Yoon-ji coordinated the Great Offensive from the New Seoul. Hundreds of tactical orders per minute flowed from her center to the 15 human fleets. If one fleet was struggling, she sent reinforcements. If another fleet faced unexpected resistance, she ordered different tactics. She was the nervous system of humanity's war machine, making sure that everything worked together in perfect coordination. The Coalition tried to launch a counterattack. A fleet of 100 Coalition ships moved to defend a critical world, but the human fleet there was not alone. 2 human fleets attacked the Coalition fleet from 2 different directions simultaneously. The Coalition ships were destroyed, and the world fell under human control. 3 weeks into the Great Offensive, something remarkable happened. The Coalition government called an emergency meeting. They understood, finally, that they could not win this war. They had believed that their superior technology and long history of peace would protect them. They were wrong. They had believed that humans would eventually give up when they realized they could not win. They were wrong. The Coalition had believed that war with humans would be simple and quick. They were so wrong that it terrified them. Vexthor sat in a room with other Coalition leaders, all of them looking at maps showing world after world falling to human control. In just 3 weeks, humans had captured 30 Coalition worlds. The military power of the Coalition had been cut in half, and there was no stopping the human advance. More human ships were arriving every day. More human soldiers were landing on Coalition worlds. More Coalition defenses were being destroyed. "How is this possible?" one Coalition leader asked, his voice shaking with fear. "How can these primitives defeat us?" Vexthor did not answer because he did not know. He had been so sure of Coalition superiority that he had never really studied humans. He had never understood what humans were capable of. He had dismissed them as weak and primitive, And now, his dismissal was costing the Coalition everything. Admiral Teo's fleet moved toward the Coalition capital world. This was the heart of Coalition power, the place where their greatest leaders lived and ruled. The planet was defended by the most advanced weapons the Coalition had created. It was protected by their largest military fleet. It was supposed to be unbeatable. But Teo had a plan. He did not attack the planet directly. Instead, he attacked the shipyard that built Coalition ships. The shipyard that had created the most advanced warships in the galaxy was destroyed in 2 days of fighting. The Coalition could no longer manufacture military ships. This meant that every ship they lost now could not be replaced. After the shipyard fell, the Coalition's military situation became hopeless. They had ships, but they could not build new ones. Every battle meant fewer ships defending their worlds, and humans kept coming. More ships, more soldiers, more determination. General Hyun-soo watched the progress of the Great Offensive from Earth. Victory after victory was reported. World after world fell under human control. The Coalition, which had ruled the galaxy for 500 years, was collapsing. It was happening faster than even Hyun-soo had predicted. The Great Offensive is succeeding beyond all expectations, he told the government leaders of Earth. The Coalition will fall within months. Humanity will be the dominant power in the galaxy. Everything we have worked for is coming true. But even as victory seemed certain, Admiral Teo felt no joy. He thought about the millions of soldiers who had died. He thought about the Coalition worlds that were now devastated. He thought about the innocent beings who had suffered because their leaders had been arrogant. War was necessary, but it was also terrible. And Teo understood something that Vexthor had never learned. The cost of victory is always paid in blood and suffering. The Coalition was dying, but the galaxy would be born anew, and nothing would ever be the same again. The planet called Eternal Spire was the capital of the Coalition. For 500 years, it had been the center of galactic power. Coalition leaders ruled from this world, making decisions that affected billions of beings across thousands of systems. The planet was beautiful, with crystal towers that reached toward the sky and gardens that never needed rain. It was a world of peace and plenty. And now, it was about to become a battlefield. Admiral Teo stood on the bridge of the New Soul, which now served as the flagship of the entire human military. He was old now, his hair completely white, his face covered with scars from the long war, but his eyes were still sharp, still focused on victory. Beside him stood Dr. Hae-won, who had become the administrator of all human-occupied territories. She was no longer just a diplomat. She was a ruler now, making decisions about how humans would govern the worlds they had conquered. "How many ships?" Teo asked, his voice quiet and steady. 300, his officer replied, plus 2,000 support ships and 100 transport ships carrying ground forces. Teo nodded. 300 military ships was more than enough to attack Eternal Spire. The Coalition had once had thousands of ships, but most of them had been destroyed in the battles of the past months. Now, the Coalition could defend their capital with fewer than 200 ships. The battle would be close, but humans would win. They always won now. The human fleet moved toward Eternal Spire with weapons armed. The Coalition defenses detected them and immediately prepared for battle. Ancient weapon systems, dormant for centuries, were activated. They were powerful weapons, created when the Coalition still believed they might face a real threat. But they had been updated only once in 200 years. They were not powerful enough. The first human attack came at dawn on Eternal Spire's cycle. Hundreds of human ships unleashed weapons that lit up the sky like lightning. Coalition defenses fired back, and the battle began. Ships exploded on both sides, but the humans kept coming. When Coalition weapons destroyed a human ship, 5 more appeared to replace it. The Coalition defense fleet fought with courage and skill, but they were outnumbered and outmatched. Vexthor watched the battle from a secure location beneath the planet's surface. He had been captured 3 weeks earlier when a human assault team had attacked the building where he was giving orders. Now, he sat in a prison cell on the new Sol, forced to watch his own world burn. Admiral Teo had brought him here specifically so that he could watch. Teo wanted Vexthor to understand, truly understand, what he had created by rejecting humanity. A large coalition defensive weapon fired at the human ships, destroying 3 of them immediately. It was a powerful blast. Hundreds of human soldiers died in that moment. But the human fleet did not hesitate. They did not slow down. They did not mourn. They simply adjusted their tactics and attacked from a different angle. Within minutes, the defensive weapon exploded in a chain of explosions that spread across kilometers. The human ground forces landed while the space battle was still happening. Thousands of soldiers descended to Eternal Spire's surface, equipped with weapons and armor that made them look like machines. They moved through the crystal towers, fighting coalition soldiers from place to place. The coalition warriors were trained and disciplined, but they were not prepared for humans. Humans did not fight with honor or tradition. They fought to kill. They fought to win. They fought without mercy. Lieutenant Dae Sung led one group of soldiers through the heart of Eternal Spire's capital city. Buildings around him exploded from weapon fire. Coalition soldiers appeared from doorways and corridors, and Dae Sung's soldiers destroyed them. There was no negotiation. There was no mercy. There was only the advance of human forces toward their objective, the Council Hall, where coalition leadership gave their orders. The space battle raged for 3 days. Slowly, the human forces overwhelmed the coalition fleet. More and more coalition ships were destroyed. Fewer and fewer responded to orders. The defense became disorganized as commanders died and communication systems were destroyed. By the 4th day, the coalition fleet had been completely destroyed. No coalition ships remained in orbit around Eternal Spire. The ground battle took 2 weeks. Fighting moved from streets to buildings to underground structures. Coalition soldiers made their final stand in the Council Hall itself, a massive structure where they had ruled the galaxy for centuries. It was here that they made their last effort to stop the human advance. Admiral Teo went to see Vexthor in his prison. The counselor sat in a cell, no longer proud and certain. His 3 eyes were closed. His posture was defeated. He looked like a being who had truly understood the magnitude of his failure. "You have won," Vexthor said without opening his eyes. "You have destroyed the coalition. You have conquered our worlds. You have achieved everything you wanted. What more do you want from me?" Teo looked at his enemy for a long time before answering. "I want you to understand," he said finally. "I want you to understand why we won. Not because our ships were better. Not because our weapons were more powerful. You had both of those things. We won because we wanted victory more than we wanted comfort. We won because we were willing to die. We won because we understood something that you never learned, that there are beings in this universe who will not surrender. There are beings who will take everything from you if you give them no choice." Vexthor opened his eyes and looked at the human. "I see that now," he said quietly. "I should have shown you respect at Harmony Point. I should have treated you as equals. If I had, this would not have happened." "You are correct," Teo said, "but it is too late to change the past. The coalition is finished. Your days of ruling the galaxy are over." The council hall fell after 3 days of intense fighting. The last coalition soldiers made their final stand on the highest level of the building. When they saw that they could not win, some of them surrendered. Others fought to the death. Humans respected those who fought to the end. Those who surrendered were treated fairly. The human code was simple. Fight with honor, and you will be treated with honor. Surrender, and you will live. But try to trick us, and you will die. Dr. Haywan arrived on Eternal Spire 1 week after the battle ended. She walked through the destroyed capital city, seeing the destruction of war. Buildings were collapsed, streets were covered with debris. The beauty of Eternal Spire had been destroyed. But the war was over. The coalition was finished. Haywan's new job was to organize the occupation of coalition territories. She met with local leaders, both humans and aliens. She explained new laws that would govern all beings equally. She established policies that were fair but firm. Humans would hold the military power, but coalition worlds would have the freedom to govern themselves in most matters. There was one rule that could not be broken. Never challenge human military authority. Break this rule, and punishment would be swift and total. Admiral Teo stood once more at a viewing window, but this time he looked out at Eternal Spire instead of Harmony Point. The city below was being repaired. Workers were rebuilding the damaged structures. New leaders were organizing government. The transition from coalition rule to human rule was happening. Haywan came and stood beside him. "Do you feel victory?" she asked. Teo was quiet for a moment. "I feel something," he said finally. "But I do not know if I would call it victory. Millions are dead. Worlds are destroyed. The coalition will be remembered forever now as the power that was defeated by humans. Is that victory? Or is it just the end of one phase of war and the beginning of the next?" Haywan understood what he meant. They had won militarily, but the hard part was just beginning. Now they had to rule. They had to prove that humans could govern better than the coalition had. They had to show that humans were not just conquerors, but builders. They had to prove that victory was just the first step. Vexthor was brought to see the destruction of his world. He was made to walk through the ruined capital city to see what his arrogance had caused. Some might call this cruel, but Teo believed it was necessary. The counselor needed to understand completely what his choices had resulted in. As Vexthor looked at the destruction, he finally broke down. He fell to his knees and wept, understanding completely and forever that his actions had led to this moment. He had rejected humanity, and humanity had destroyed him. The lesson was learned too late, but it was learned. The war was over. The victory was complete. But as Teo looked at his defeated enemy and the destroyed world, he understood something that would guide him for the rest of his life. Victory is never as sweet as you imagine it will be. It always costs more than you think. And the real war, the war to create a better galaxy, was just beginning. 10 years had passed since the fall of Eternal Spire. The galaxy had changed dramatically in that time. What was once the Coalition's territory was now divided among several powers, with humanity holding the majority. Earth had become the center of galactic government. Humans sat on councils that made decisions for billions of beings. The species that had once been rejected and humiliated now commanded respect from every corner of the known universe. The Hall of Remembrance was built on Earth to honor those who had died in the war. The names of 50 million humans were carved into walls of white stone. Visitors came from across the galaxy to see this place. They came to understand what had happened and why. The hall was not a place of celebration. It was a place of respect for those who had paid the price of victory. Admiral Teo, now retired and very old, stood in the hall alone. His white hair reflected the light from the stone walls. His body was bent with age and the weight of so many years of warfare. But his mind was still sharp. He remembered every battle, every decision, and every soldier who had followed him into impossible situations. A young alien woman entered the hall. Her name was Kessatel, and she was a historian from a peaceful species that had lived far from the Coalition's influence. She had come to Earth specifically to interview Admiral Teo. She wanted to understand how a young, primitive species had defeated the greatest power in the galaxy. "Admiral Teo," she called out, her voice echoing slightly in the empty hall. Teo turned. He looked at the young alien and saw intelligence and curiosity in her eyes. "I am Teo," he said. "You must be the historian." Kessatal nodded and moved closer. "I have studied the Coalition's fall for 3 years," she said. "I have read every document, every battle report, every military analysis. But I still do not understand one thing. How did you do it? How did a species that had been in space for less than 200 years defeat a civilization that had existed for 500? Teo smiled. It was a sad smile, the smile of someone who had seen too much. "Come with me," he said. "I will tell you the answer. But you must understand that the answer is not what you expect. It is not a simple story of superior strategy or better weapons." They walked through the hall, passing the names of the dead carved in the white stone. Teo stopped at one section where the names were so numerous that they covered entire walls. "When I stood on Harmony Point," Teo began, "I felt something that the Coalition had forgotten. I felt humiliation. I felt anger. I felt the knowledge that my people had been rejected and disrespected. The Coalition thought this would make me weak. Instead, it made me strong. Desperation is a powerful force. When you have nothing, when you have already lost everything that matters, you become dangerous." Kessatal listened carefully, writing everything in her notebook. Teo continued walking. The Coalition had been comfortable for too long. They had lived with peace and plenty for centuries. They had forgotten what it meant to fight. They had forgotten what it meant to sacrifice. They had forgotten what it meant to face the possibility of death. Humans, on the other hand, have always known these things. Earth is a world where survival is not guaranteed. Humans must fight to live. We understand struggle in our bones. When the Coalition rejected us, they activated that understanding. They came to a section of the hall where thousands of names were listed together. These were soldiers from one battle, the largest single engagement of the war. 30,000 humans died in this one battle, Teo said quietly. 30,000 lives, gone forever. The Coalition lost 100,000 soldiers in that same battle, but they considered it a disaster. They were not used to losing that many. We knew that winning meant accepting losses. That was something the Coalition never learned. Kestal asked, "Do you regret it? Do you wish you had not fought the war?" Teo was quiet for a long time. He looked at the wall of names and thought about every single one of them. Each name represented a person. Each person had family, had dreams, had hopes for the future. All of that was gone because Teo had made decisions in a war that could not be won without sacrifice. "I do not regret it," he said finally, "but I mourn it. Every day I mourn. I regret that the Coalition rejected us. I regret that they were too arrogant to see that humans deserved respect. If they had shown that respect, all these people would still be alive. But once the war began, I do not regret the decisions I made. We had to win. Our entire species depended on it." They left the hall and went to a viewing platform where they could see Earth below. The planet was beautiful and blue, covered with cities and forests and oceans. It was home to billions of humans, all living their lives, working and building and dreaming. "You are wondering if we will become like the Coalition," Teo said. "You are wondering if we will grow soft and comfortable now that we have won." Kestal was surprised. "How did you know that?" she asked. "Because it is a logical question," Teo replied. "And the answer is no. We will not become like them. We cannot afford to. The moment humans become comfortable, we become vulnerable. And there will always be someone waiting for that moment of weakness." He pointed down at Earth. "Look below. You see activity, construction, research facilities, weapons development, training grounds. We are not resting. We are not celebrating. We are always preparing, always building, always improving. Because we understand something that the Coalition never learned. Victory is not an ending. It is only the beginning of the next challenge. Kessatal looked down at Earth and understood what he meant. Even 10 years after winning the Galactic War, humans were still preparing for future conflicts. They were still training soldiers. They were still developing new weapons. They were still studying potential enemies. Humans were never truly at peace. Admiral Teo took Kessatal to visit General Hyun-Soo, who was still alive at an advanced age, though his health was failing. Hyun-Soo sat in a comfortable chair, looking out at a view of the sky. When Teo explained that Kessatal was writing a history of the war, Hyun-Soo smiled. "You want to know the secret?" Hyun-Soo asked. His voice was weak but still carried authority. "Yes," Kessatal said. "I want to understand how you defeated them." "We understood something about ourselves that they did not understand about themselves," Hyun-Soo said slowly. "Humans are not like other species. We are not satisfied with being equal. We are not content with our place in the universe. We always want more. We always believe we can be better. That hunger is our greatest strength. The Coalition had lost that hunger. They thought they had reached perfection. They thought there was nothing left to achieve. That belief killed them." Over the next weeks, Kessatal interviewed many people who had participated in the war. She spoke with engineer Ji-woo, who had designed the weapons that had turned the tide of battle. Ji-woo showed her the plans for human ships that were even more advanced now than they had been during the war. "We learn from every battle," Ji-woo explained. "We take what works and make it better. We take what fails and rebuild it. We are never satisfied. There is always a new design to try, a new weapon to create, a new strategy to develop." She also spoke with Dr. Hae-won, who was now the ruler of all Coalition territories. Hae-won's approach to government was interesting. She gave Coalition worlds the freedom to govern themselves, but she maintained total military control. She was kind but firm. She was fair but did not tolerate disobedience. "Humans could have been tyrants," Hae-won explained. "We could have ruled with cruelty. But we chose a different path. We rule with respect. Coalition citizens know that if they obey the laws and do not challenge our military authority, they will be treated well. But they also know that if they challenge us, we will respond with overwhelming force. It is simple, it is fair, and it works." Kessatal finished her research and prepared to leave Earth. She had gathered enough information to write a comprehensive history of humanity's rise to power. But before she left, she visited Admiral Teo one final time. "Thank you for telling me your story," she said. "Now I understand. The Coalition fell not because humans were better, but because humans were hungry. Humans were desperate. Humans were willing to sacrifice everything. The Coalition had become so comfortable that they forgot what desperation felt like." Admiral Teo walked Kessatal to her ship. They stood together looking up at the stars above Earth. "When you return to your people," Teo said, "tell them this. The galaxy should never make the mistake the Coalition made. Do not dismiss any species as primitive. Do not assume that peace and comfort are eternal. Do not forget that there are beings in this universe who are willing to sacrifice everything for victory. And most importantly, remember that the desire to survive, the hunger for victory, and the willingness to do anything to protect your people are the most powerful forces in the universe." Kessatal promised to carry this message back to her people. She entered her ship and prepared for departure. As her ship rose into the sky, accelerating away from Earth, she looked down at the planet below. Millions of humans were moving about, working, building, preparing. They were not satisfied. They were not comfortable. They were always ready for the next challenge. When Kessatal returned to her home world, she wrote a message that was distributed across the galaxy. "Now I understand why the galaxy fears humans. It is not because of their weapons or their ships. It is because they remember. They remember the humiliation of rejection. They remember the sacrifice of war. They remember that victory must be maintained through constant vigilance. They will never forget. And the galaxy should never forget what humans are capable of doing when they feel that they have been disrespected. This message changed how many species viewed humanity. It was not seen as a threat, but it was seen with respect. Every species in the galaxy understood that humanity was different. Humanity was always preparing. Humanity was always hungry. Humanity was always ready to fight. And in the Hall of Remembrance on Earth, Admiral Teo stood once more, looking at the names of those who had died. He had lived a long and full life. He had seen his species rise from nothing to become the dominant power in the galaxy. He had made decisions that saved humanity and destroyed the coalition. He had paid a price for that victory in the weight of memory and regret. But he did not regret it, because humans had survived. Humans had thrived. And the galaxy would never forget why that had happened. They would never forget the day when humans marched to war, and the galaxy learned to fear them.